Thank you very much, everybody. We decided to do things a little bit differently this year. Board of Finance on this side, Board of Selectmen and Board of Education on this side. So when we have questions, we direct it to the appropriate group. So without further ado, let's take the glasses off. I'm going to open the Town of Andover 2024-2025 annual budget meeting Wednesday, May 1st, 2024. The first order of business is to select moderator. Any nominations? Kathy Palazzi.
I'd like to nominate
Wally Barton. Any seconds?
Second.
Mrs. Hollis. Any other nominations for moderator? Okay. Without that, it's unanimous. Wally Barton has been nominated for the moderator of our meeting.
Item number 2, receive the budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025, as prepared by the Board of Finance. I'm going to turn it over to the Chairman of the Board of Finance, Clerk Whitaker.
Thank you all. Thank you, everybody. As you know, this is a long process, and a lot of you have probably been following along. A lot of work was done early on by the Board of Education. They developed their budget separately. They held a lot of workshops, so hopefully you had a chance to review and attend there. I know it's a lot of time. And then, of course, the Board of Selectmen reviewed sorry, better? Yeah. Better? Okay, I'll start again. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. As you know, this is a long process, a lot of work by a lot of people. The Board of Education develops their budget early on. They held a lot of workshops. Hopefully, people had an opportunity to attend some of those and or ask questions. The Board of Selectmen then does the same with the town operating and capital budget. That then gets passed on to the Board of Finance for review. So after reviewing, this is our proposed budget. It's more or less in line with what was recommended by both the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen. So if you, I don't know if anybody had an opportunity, we did have a public hearing last week. We did have some good attendance, and we had some good questions come out of that. And of course, we'll have an opportunity to ask questions again today. So we'll go ahead and get started. So we'll talk a little bit about the budget process. I won't go into too much detail there. I will go through pretty fairly quickly, but if I'm going too fast, we can't hear me, let me know. We will then talk about the expenditures that are affecting the town under this budget. And they fall into two general categories, the educational budget and the operational budget and capital budget for the town. And we break those out for you. We'll also talk about revenue. Revenues offsets the expenditures to a certain degree, and then taxation is the way we make up the difference. We'll give a summary, have a question and answer period, and then there will be a period that will allow for motions and amendments to the budget if there are any. Okay, this is basically the process. Preliminary budget submitted to the Selectmen for review. Andover Elementary Board of Education they held their workshops and presented their requested budget. Board of Selectmen then sends their approved and requested budget to the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance receives the different budgets and begins their review. We then hold a public hearing on the budget that took place last week, as I mentioned. The Board of Finance finalizes our recommended budget for the town budget meeting, which is tonight. If it passes at the town meeting, then there will be a referendum on the town budget. But there's also a separate referendum on the grant budget. So that is voted on completely separately, and it is not affected by our activities here tonight. So that's important to remember. So we're really voting on just the town's budget apart from grant. This shows you what the general breakout is. As you can see, it's fairly evenly divided. So about 2/3 of the budget is for education between Graham and Andover Elementary School. 32% goes to RAM in this budget, 34% to the Andover Elementary School District, and about 34% to the town operating budget. So pretty evenly broken out. So this is our proposed budget. It's $12,836,707. This is about a 2.9% increase from the current budget. Okay, or 367,646, and we'll kind of go through what's driving some of those increases in the budget there.
The white print on the background with the lights on is difficult to see. Is it possible to dim the lights here?
Yeah, we did some. I don't know if we can click some more. Madam Holly, thank you. Yeah, good suggestion.
Oh, that's better.
I don't want to hear any snoring. Let our eyes adjust. Okay. So, of this spending increase, which is fairly reasonable if you follow the news, a lot of towns are facing a lot larger increases than this. So there's about a 2.7% increase to the Andover Elementary School Board of Education budget. Their recommended budget is about $4.348 million. It's about $113,000 more than last year. The RAM budget is, Andover's portion of it, I should say, is $4,150,106. That is $343,000 less than last year. And the reason that's less, even though the RAM budget is overall increasing, is that the percentage of Andover students going to RAM drops relative to Hebron and Marlboro, which are the other towns that make up the RAM district. So because our percentage drops, we're assessed at a lower amount. So that's kind of our bonus this year. So that actually reduced by 7.6%. And then we have the town operating budget. And that is set right here at the request of $4,338,542. That is $597,692 more than last year. It's a big jump, 16%. And again, I'll explain why we're asking for that. First, just a quick review of the Andover Elementary School budget. The Board of Education, as I said, requested a budget of $4,348,058. This covers their operational and some capital components of the budget. And we'll talk a little more about capital in a second. Again, about a 2.7% increase from 23 to 24. The RAM budget, and again, I'm just touching on this for information's sake. What we do here tonight does not affect it. We cannot take any action on this. At this point, the only action that you can take would be to vote at the RAM budget referendum, which is coming up, and I'm not sure the date of that. But the RAM operating budget is about $31 million, about a 2.3% increase. Capital budget is about $500,000, which is a slight increase, or decrease. I thought it was a decrease this year. And then our percentage, as I mentioned earlier, decreased in terms of the percent of Andover students attending RAM compared to Marlboro and Hebron. We went from 14.3% to 13.43%, and that reduces our obligations to the RAM district. So the total levy for RAM is $4,150,000 roughly. The overall decrease, as I said, $343,307. Okay, let's get down to the details here on the town budget. Okay, so this does not include educational expenses, as we pointed out. The town budget has two components, and it's important to understand the difference between them. One is the operating expenses. This is what it takes to run the town on a day-to-day basis, and what we pay for our services, et cetera, that we get through the town. Then we have the capital budget. So that's the budget for the large capital expenditures. So that's how we fund the major improvements or infrastructure projects, et cetera, that have to happen in the town. And typically, that money may or may not get expended in any given year. We often have to have town meetings to approve those large expenditures per the charter. But they, especially the large projects like bridges and roads, et cetera, they need to be funded every year, even if we don't have expenditures, because none of us wants to spend $16 million a year for a big project, right? So we have to plan that ahead of time. That's what the capital funds are for. Okay, so it's a pretty significant overall increase in the town operating budget. The increased requested budget is increasing to $3,075,000, $43. It's about $318,691 increase, or 11.6%. There's a few major factors that are contributing to that increase. It's important to understand these. One is the staffing expenses for the new community center, which we sometimes refer to as the senior center. So we are very fortunate to be able to build that, thanks to ARPA funds, as well as some of the money that the town has set aside. But we're not done yet. In order to make this usable, we have certain expenses. We have to heat it, we have to cool it, we have to staff it, and just take care of the general needs of the community center on a year-to-year basis. Okay, so that's a pretty significant chunk right there. We had a significant increase in our health and dental insurance, about 16%, or about $70,000. Okay, so not much we can really do with that. We'll look at alternatives, of course, every year as we can, but the options are limited. We all know healthcare goes up. We have an increased salary for the town treasurer. This is a part-time position, and there's been different ways we did it, but really $15,000 is just not adequate to do what we needed to do. A lot of you may be aware that we had significant issues with our audits and with our books over the last several years. We finally have really worked hard, thanks to Eric, the current town treasurer, and a lot of other people working hard to get that all cleared up. We had some really good results relatively in our audit this year, and we'd like to keep it that way. We need to keep our books in order. We can't let it happen again.
Can you hold the mic closer?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, okay. We also have an increased salary town treasurer. I just talked about that. That's important. And we're also looking for a new part-time project manager, administrator to help Eric. One of the problems that he's having with a lot of his large amount of things he's trying to get done is just managing projects such as grants and major infrastructure projects. So we think that we can hire somebody part-time to help him out, and that'll have the most bang for the buck in terms of the administrative functions. He's kind of using the administrators here and there for various things, and this would clean that up and allow us to focus on this. Now, $15,000 is not very much for a part-time project manager, but we think that we can offset this partially and maybe augment it potentially, but at least offset that salary with some of the grants that we potentially obtain will allow you to use some of that money for the cost of the project manager for those projects. So that's all we have there. Okay, so significant increase to the town operating budget, but even more significant to the town capital budget. So we're increasing the town capital budget on a recommended budget here to $1,247,000. This is a $279,000 increase, so it's a big increase, 28.8%. Now, where is it going, or what is this doing? It's funding, as I said, the capital projects and equipment. Sometimes we need to buy large equipment in town. We need to buy equipment for the Department of Public Works, very expensive. We need to buy fire engines, fire equipment, very expensive. We have other capital needs, buildings, parking lots, etc. So that's where all this money goes. We need to have a strong commitment to repairing and replacing the infrastructure in terms of roads, bridges, culverts. We've said this over the last several years. It's still true today. We neglected this for way too long, and now we're unfortunately having to cover that. So it's a problem. Again, mostly road and bridge work related funds. Then the other thing, that second to last bullet, we will need to get back to contributing some to the multi-use building fund. Originally, we started this fund to help fund the senior center or the community center. There's still some additional work we need to do, as well as some of the other buildings in town. So this is what we're asking. We've also done something new here. We've added a capital fund for the Andover Elementary School. Now, We have not had one up until this year. It really has not been a good mechanism to help support capital projects at Andover Elementary School. This became a project or a problem last year where we had a failing situation in the upper parking lot and some of the other areas. And since then, it's become an even bigger problem because we have some real failed infrastructure in terms of the plumbing at Andover Elementary School. We have some very big expenditures that are going to come up just to make that part of the school usable. And it's not going to be an option for us. We're going to have to do it. Capital funds projects, just kind of showed you how they're broken out. The project funds that were in the budget. So about 36% of it, the biggest nut there is road and improvement. The another large one is bridge and culvert repair, and then the light blue in the upper right corner is the fire department funds, to fund the fire department's equipment. And here is broken out a little bit by the numbers. So these are the major funds that we're asking for in this budget. We think it's reasonable, and we think it's important to do this. This is really an investment in our town for the next 10 years. Some of it, maybe 5 years. Fire department equipment, we've got $137,000. Public works equipment, $125,000. Road improvement, $410,000. That's an increase. Tree removal, we kept flat at $50,000. Bridge and culvert repair and replacement has also increased. This is a pretty big one at $175,000. Building maintenance at $100,000, and then the new one, the AES capital fund, at $100,000. We feel like we need to get this funded in order to do the projects that are going to be able to hopefully let us avoid further problems at the school. We've also gone back to funding the open space fund. We haven't done this in a while. There's $50,000 recommended to fund the open space fund. What this fund allows us to do is potentially pick up properties or purchase properties on behalf of the town that might allow us to protect some of the rights of way, or just green space, or just improve some of the quality of life in various areas. We had some opportunities to pick up some properties over the last year or two, but we had not have the opportunity. We didn't really have a mechanism with the funding in place to do so, and kind of missed that opportunity. So we want to make sure that we have the open space fund adequate to take advantage of even these fairly small opportunities that might come up. So that's what that's for. Okay, so now we'll look at revenue. This is the money coming into the town. So we have a lot of different sources. It's on the budget spreadsheet there. Interest is a significant one. We get interest on our bank accounts, etc. We have state and federal grants. We actually have a breakout of some of the grants that the town's been awarded, so you can see what we're doing there. State educational cost sharing. So this is a grant from the state, or an allocation from the state to help support towns with the cost of education within the district. Permits and fees. These are just the permits and fees collected by the town clerk for building projects and other projects. So our overall revenues are up about $175,000, so 7%, which is really great. And I just want to point out that most of this increase is really due to the new interest-bearing accounts that we set up thanks to the town treasurer and Eric. They work pretty hard. It's pretty much a no-brainer, but they're able to get our money into an interest-bearing account that's really been a huge amount. The town holds a fair amount of cash. We put it in there, and we're just making tens of thousands of dollars every month, literally on interest. So putting our capital funds really into an investment opportunity for us. Okay. Thank you again. I know you can't see this, but it is in your printout. So just want to point out, so these are the active grants, the grants we have. There's senior transportation, new senior bus, Route 16 pathway redesign, LOTSIP, which is the, gotta remember now what that is for, senior transportation building, rec field improvements. Oh, okay, sorry, yeah. So there's I'll just, I thought that was Wally trying to get me out of the I should be so lucky, right? Yeah. But at any rate, the funding amount of these grants is over $13 million. So that's huge for this time. Really great. We're going to have to do a match to complete some of these projects at the tune of about $1.1 million. But I'll take a 12-to-1 ratio every day. So good work there.
Are those grants allowed to supplant local resources? I know the education.
They could. They could. Well, the grants are usually very specific. I don't know all the details on it, but usually they're awarded for very specific projects. So, if it's for local infrastructure for transportation options, you might spend it on, intersection improvements or whatever it might be. So they usually tend to be designated for specific projects. So, you're not going to get one necessarily for, $500,000 to be able to apply it to the fire department, or to the elementary school. As you usually have to use it for a specific project. Again, that's kind of what that project manager position is for, is to help write grants to bring more money into the town. Eric's been very, very successful, but it's a big task and a lot of work to follow. The deadlines are very tight and the requirements are very specific. So it's worked out well for us. Okay, so this is the summary. I've already listed all these numbers, I think, except for the past years, but it's there. We got about 2.7% increase in the Andover Elementary, 7.6% decrease in the RAM budget, 16% in the overall town operating budget. Again, most of that is due to the increases in capital funds that we're recommending. So they're not in. I don't think they're in the package.
Oh, I thought you said that. I'm sorry.
No, they're out here.
I apologize.
Oh, I may have said that. I thought maybe you
I was looking at
were. We probably didn't include them. Eric, is that right? Yeah.
No, that wasn't in the packet that was
Yeah. But we would be happy to mail that out. So we're also recommending that we use about $150,000 of our fund balance. So the fund balance this is the overall fund, the contingency fund that we have. Town has a fund balance that we keep. This is really like a rainy day fund. How much is in it right now? Eric, I don't know. Do you know that number?
What was the question?
How much is in the fund balance right now?
So not including what we're putting in the fund balance, it's just over 10% of the overall budget.
Yeah, so that's usually where it is. It's about 10%, and that's generally following state guidelines. They don't want you to be too high above it. You don't want to be too low because you put yourself at risk if you have a real problem. Yes, sir.
You've explained that our part of the RAM budget is going down because our fraction of the students enrolled. Is that largely due to us sending fewer students, or to Hebron and Marlborough sending more students?
And my guess is it's a mix of both. I'll defer that to the Board of Education.
Okay.
Yeah.
And related to that,
long term, I think that the number is supposed to go up is the
Yeah.
projection. So we are expecting that this is not going to last. So
Yeah.
we have to.
related to that, I see the budget for Andover Elementary is going up. How much is the enrollment going up year to year?
Well, it's going up every year.
Right, because you have a rough percentage. I'm just curious.
We have about 220 kids right now, and we're projected to have about 235 in the fall.
Okay. So,
And it was 190, so we're steadily increasing every month, actually.
And the RAM one is because it's following what was in elementary school. Do you remember when we had such a significant decrease?
yeah.
That's following, and now we're back on the upswing.
When our kids were there, that was the last big cohort. It's
Correct.
gone downhill, now it's coming
following
back
those
up.
students, so now it's
Yeah,
back.
and if Andover, Hebron and Marlborough don't increase their percentage of students, or don't have more students going there too, we might find our percentage increasing in the next few years. So I think even more important, we have to watch, and if we're going to fund the capital funds, now would be a smart time to do it, while we have this opportunity to lower RAM costs. So if you factor in the expenditures of the budget, the revenues that we have coming in, This leaves the total of taxation required at $10,050,775. That is an increase of $107,247 over last year's budget, or that percentage is right, 1.1%. Yeah, I guess it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, sorry. The mill rate is less than 1%, that's what I can get mixed up. Speaking of the mill rate. So the mill rate calculation is based on what taxes are required to be raised to meet our budgetary obligations and what the value of the property in town is. So you calculate basically what the value of the town is. That's the taxable grand list. So here the grand list, that's right here. So the taxable grand list for 24-25 is expected to be slightly under $320 million. You divide that by 1,000 to get what a mill is. That's just a weird thing that they do to factor in the taxation, calculated based on mills. So a mill in Andover would be about $319,458. So when you divide that out, the estimated mill rate goes to 31.46. So that's about a 0.55%, or less than 1%, about a 0.5% increase in the mill rate. So it doesn't mean that your taxes are only going to go up by 0.5%. If your property goes up, it's assessed at higher value, it might go up a little more. If it's assessed at a lower value, it could go down a little bit. So it all depends on the property that you own and you're assessed at. Dollar General moved in, for example, that added to the grand list. They're paying taxes into there. If my house goes up in value, I might have to pay a little more taxes relative to my neighbor if their house goes down in value. So it's based on your assessed value. That's what the mill rate's applied to.
The left column and the middle column both have the same heading. Is one of those supposed to be proposed? They both say
Actual.
They both say actual.
Yeah, one's 22, 23, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I realized we had the wrong headers in there. There were costs a lot of
Okay, gotcha.
years. Sorry about that. Yeah, it should be 22, 23, 23, 24, and then this year is 24, 25. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so Andover's total taxation is determined by the total budget offset by our revenue. The recommended town budget is $12,836,707 for an increase of slightly less than 3%. Calculated mill rate is 31.46. Just as an example, a house assessed at $200,000 would pay $6,292 in taxes. So I think, I used this example last year, I think it went up like 50 or 60 bucks. Just relative, so this is just section 803 of the charter. It talks about the town budget meeting. That's the legal language. This is what we're here for. So just as a reminder, text in yellow here says the town meeting may make amendments to the proposed budget, provided, however, that the town meeting shall only have the power to reduce or modify, but not increase the budget or any portion thereof. So we can make amendments to change the line items in this budget, but we cannot increase the overall budget. Okay, so we're at our point where we can take additional questions. I'll entertain motions to modify or amend the budget. I'll turn it back over to Walter.
Okay, does anyone want to make a motion to amend any part of the budget? Need your name in the town clerk, please. I'd rather you come up to the mic if you would, please, Joe, so we can all hear.
Joseph Remish. As they pointed out, we're spending a lot of money, and thank you everyone for working so hard. I just wanted to suggest that, or make a motion to, I'm not sure what you call this, but it's page 6, 4214. I guess it's a line item. The wages for the director for the new community center. And that's a full-time job as it is. I suggest that we make that a part-time position for now. We can always make it a full-time later, and ease into it with perhaps no benefits right now.
I need, in the form of a motion, to request how much you want to lower that specific line item.
Part-time would be half that, so
41.
it's at 50,000, so we'll put it at 25,000.
Okay, that's in the form of a motion. Is there a second? Kim Hawes, second. Discussion. Selectman, or Eric, do you have anything to say?
I can understand the request that is being made, but we spent a significant amount of money to build that building, and the goal is for that person to pay for themselves, not just sit there and collect a salary. There are a certain amount of fees that should be generated by that building from usage, from rental purposes, to running all of the other programs in town that have been not cared for as much as they should have been in the past. We should have had a recreational coordinator for years and years and years in this community, and we never have. So while I respect the request, I don't feel that it's appropriate. I feel as if it's looking at the town backwards. So you got to go forwards. We got to try to do this in an appropriate manner, and that's why we put it in the budget.
Just as a point of information, the Board of Finance, this original request of the Board of Selectmen, I think was at $60,000. We did reduce it by $10,000, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Further comment or discussion? Seeing none. Oh, excuse me.
Sorry, Joanne Hoover, Board of Finance. I just wanted to add to Mark's point that
Hold it closer.
Joanne Hoover, Board of Finance member. We did think a lot about this position because it was brought forward in this manner as something that might come up at town meeting. We understand that, like Jeff said, the community has waited. I've been here almost 20 years, and since I've been here, I met a lot of the senior citizens and the community members that have waited for this building. So, you know, we were a little bit on the fence as well, but we would like it to get up and running as fast as it can with the correct amount of people there. Hiring one part-time person that might work maybe 20 hours a week to get something from the grassroots on up and get all the services going, take, you know, help with the senior things that need to be done as far as recreation, like Jeff had mentioned. So we put a lot of thought in it, and that's what went behind. But we also agreed that maybe starting the salary so high was a little bit tough to take, and we did reduce it a little bit.
Microphone, Mr. Nichols.
Hi, Todd Sawyer. I'm just wondering, how much the skills of this job and the new project administrator overlap? Is there a chance of combining the roles?
Good evening, folks. So when we started contemplating what we wanted for staffing for the senior/community center, we kind of took a look at all the things we thought we weren't doing a great job of and said, how can we improve those? So right off the bat, the objective for the new staff position would be for somebody to manage, essentially be a senior center director, a community center director, and a rec center director, all rolled into one individual. because we are a small town. And whereas Coventry has 7 full-time staff to do those 3 functions, we're proposing 1. So we're not really trying to overstaff this, at least I don't think. So in terms of what that position has to do for senior transportation, that person is going to take over administrating the administration for the vehicles, drivers and schedules, and budget and managing of all the grants that fund that program. As many of you know, we have a new $135,000 bus sitting out in the parking lot that Kathy Palazzi wrote the grant for as a volunteer. But there is quite a bit of money available if we're prolific and really going after it from a grant perspective. That person would be managing all the senior luncheon programs in Young at Heart. They wouldn't be deciding what they were doing, but they would be the person on the ground managing it. They would also be in charge of figuring out how to do all the senior trips. One of the things we've been really adamant at is expanding the recreational activities for seniors. And the reason is, quite frankly, we capture a fairly small portion of the seniors in town, and we're not capturing any of the active seniors, or not many of them, and we can do a lot better than that. But frankly, we just need to change the mix of programming we have, not subtracting from our current program, which serves a certain group of people, but adding to that to capture all the other seniors that we're not really doing anything for. On the recreation end of things, obviously senior-focused recreation. The second thing is doing a better job of youth sports coordination and scheduling, both at the gym. We're about to add pickleball courts outdoor to the town in addition to the pickleball that's occurring in here in the gymnasium. And I think there's a bunch of other things we can add. Cornhole being one. There's a lot of opportunities for adult recreation that we're just not really capturing and that we should be. That person would deal with the maintenance of the athletic fields as part of the rec hat. And one of the other things we've been talking about is coordinating with AHM to start bringing their services here in Andover instead of having people go to Hebron each time for counseling and other things. And I think that's something that would be beneficial for this community. One of the things they've said specifically is that they would not consider programming here unless there is a staff person on site with whoever their employee is during whatever counseling. So they have a rule that there has to be at least 2 people in the facility, not including whoever is being counseled, if that's going to happen. The second thing is rec and special events. We're going to end up building out the basement to be a really not the lowest floor, to be a really functional space. That may take a year or so, but we'll get there. And then we have something that the community can rent and hold their own events there, because that's something we're really lacking in this area. There really just aren't a lot of options in terms of holding events. I think that's pretty valuable. In terms of other things, I really want whoever we hire to be a fairly experienced grant writer. We've been able to bring a ton of money into the town, but it's a time-intensive process and it takes somebody that's a reasonably good grant writer. That person should be, if we can get a fairly experienced person in there, there's a lot of money available for senior programming that we're not capturing. We have some volunteers that are writing grants now that have done a fantastic job of getting grant money for the town. Just in vehicles alone in the last, 5 or 6 years, we've gotten since 2017, we've gotten 2 new vehicles, and we got another one in 2014, plus money to offset the senior transportation program. And really the last thing that person has to do is at some point we're going to end up migrating the town's smaller version of a shelter to the community center, because it's kind of ideally set up for that. So that person's going to have to assist in the emergency shelter operations if we ever have a real natural disaster. And the last thing is, whoever's in that position is gonna basically be in charge of the fiscal management of the budget of that, and management of the center itself. So it's an awful lot rolled into one person, and I think stating that you're gonna make them do all that, and then they're also gonna be a project manager for construction projects is probably not realistic. The reason why I asked for the addition of a fee for, or a budget for a project manager is that we've got a ton of grant money right now. I mean, around $13.5 million in state and federal funding that we've already gotten. And there's probably another $500,000 right now that we're waiting on to see whether we get or not. So, but the problem is that I end up being the person that manages the construction events and the grants themselves. And that's a lot on me if I'm also running a town and managing people and managing all the other things I have to do. So what I need is assistance at that. And the reason it's in your best interest is because we have the money to do the projects. The problem is we don't have the manpower to get them done right now. And so I'm asking for some additional help to do that. Now, to do that, I'm also giving up, right now, I'm budgeted for a part-time admin assistant. So what this budget does is this gives up my admin assistant and assigns those roles to our tax collector. So we're putting additional responsibility on the tax collector, giving the tax collector a small stipend and using the difference between what we were paying an admin assistant for me and the stipend to fund that position. If that answers your question. I realize that was a little long-winded, so my apologies.
Additional comments, questions?
I just want to point out one thing, and it's not a comment specifically with regard to this, but in case you're wondering, the wages are all that are represented on each line item for each position in town. So I just want you to be clear. When I looked at it last week and prior in the budget workshops, you need to be clear that that's only the wages. And this town also would be responsible for paying for Social Security, Medicare. I don't know what we do with regard to health insurance, not my ballpark. But we also contribute to a pension fund called MRF. There's a substantial amount that's added on to each wage. So just because the wage is $50,000 doesn't mean the total cost of that specific item, and I'm just using that specific item as an example, is a total cost of what that new position will be.
Anything else? Kathy, microphone's there. Just talk, put up the mic.
Can you hear me? Yes. For the past 26 years, I have been donating my free time to the town of Andover because I love it. The one thing that concerns me is, I thought when I heard $60,000 being put in for the salary, I was kind of excited. And the next thing I see, it's printed out, it's 50. I just actually heard about that the other day, that it's 50. I am concerned about that because I really wonder if anyone has ever thought, what do the people do? Who are these people? What do they do? Well, I am the person, and I have been doing this. And I didn't run around saying, hey, listen, I'm saving you money, because I am saving you. I have been for years. And now it's time, because I want to retire from every volunteering job I do. And I've been trying to pull out of everything gradually. I need to do this. I've talked with Eric extensively. We are so lucky to have Eric as our town administrator because he has done a fabulous job. I know that some of us don't agree, it's normal, but I want to think about a moment of the senior that we have a building. I don't want to call it a senior center because it's a community building. It's a community senior center building. And the reason I feel it's for everyone in this town. My big thing was I wanted to have little moving forward, that we would have a person that's taking care of the seniors in all capacities. That person is going to do everything that Eric talked about, I think so anyway. And that person, I want to tell you about transportation. We have 4 vehicles. We are so fortunate to have those vehicles. And I'm very happy that I was able to bring these to the town. And I'm very grateful that the town paid for 20% of these vehicles. Actually, the last one was completely free. So I think that we need to think about what are we doing with the money? This person doing senior transportation, I work on that project every single day, and I have to tell you that this is no exaggeration, no less than 3 full hours. 3 full hours that I work all day, but I'm saying 3 full hours that a person would have to dedicate. And I think you're going to find out, I hate to say this to the Board of Finance, but you're going to find out that that person is going to come in and do the jobs that Eric wants, and she's going to have to go to Eric and say, Eric, I can't do everything. You need to hire me a part-time person to take care of senior transportation. I think you need to think about it. And the budget, to me, I think it's a pretty good budget this year. I was surprised because I thought it was going to be a lot more. But anyway, that's my feeling on it. You do need to pay a person, and $60,000 was quite reasonable for what that person's going to do.
Additional comments?
I have one. I'd like to thank Kathy Palazzi for everything she's done for this town for all those years.
Probably be heard. When is the senior center going to be finished such that this position would need to start?
By July 1.
I asked when the senior center was going to be completed such that this position would need to start, and the answer was by July 1st, if not sooner.
Anything else? Okay. When you came in, you received a packet of ballots.
Wait. That's a second. You have to vote on
We have to vote on it.
This is the motion being voted on.
Just raise our hand.
Oh, motion.
Do you have a comment?
Whenever I look at other budgets and other organizations, they always tell you what's been spent so far. So my question is, how do we get a budget that shows the items that were spent so far? Because a lot of these lines just seem like it's the same number year after year after year.
I hate to do this, but you're out of order. We're only discussing the motion that was put on the floor.
Okay.
You can come back up later and ask your question.
So, since I'm here, I wanted to know how many seniors we have in town.
How many seniors, Kathy? You have a figure?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
How many seniors do we have? We have over 400.
So over 400 seniors, that's a good thing to consider when you're only asking for one person to help with everything that these 400 seniors.
Lolly, which number? 4? 2. You want 2?
We said ballot number 2 in your packet. So everyone understands this is to reduce the salary level by 50% for the person that is going to be in charge of the community.
So yes agrees with the motion.
Yes agrees to cut the salary, no says don't change it. And the registrars will be coming around collecting your ballots. Ballot number 2, the second one in the back. Thank you.
I don't have that.
That's why I'm
All the ballots in. All right. Back to the original budget itself. Additional questions on the budget. Does anyone have additional questions or motions on the original budget proposal? Yes, ma'am. Now you can speak on that.
Yes, I just want to know how we can get the actual expenditures that have been spent so far, so that when we look at the budget, it's not just the same line year after year after year.
Every month in our package, if you look at the Board of Selectmen meetings and the meeting minutes, you will sit there and see that information every month. So you can sit there and go through it month by month. The actual budget was set last year, how much has been spent year to date, and what is left to be spent.
Same for the Board of Finance meeting, we usually go through, not every meeting we have the data, we usually go through the budget versus actual, and it's in the package, it's on the town website, the most, like the one from March 27th, I just pulled it up, so it is there, you know, it's not current today, but we do, so it's in the package.
I was going to add to that, I'm pretty sure in the process when we went through working up our budget, that there was a couple of meetings, and I apologize off the top of my head, I don't know how many meetings ago, 3, 4, something like that, where we had kind of year end, which I think is what you're looking for, the final totals of what was expended. Well, I should say final up until we worked up this budget, which honestly, it's not going to be year end is June 30th. So if you went back through our budget workshop meetings, I know it can be difficult to sort through it all. I'm pretty sure that data is in there too. So there's a couple different ways you can kind of tackle it.
Marcy, it's also in the Board of Ed, it's also on the town website every month, in our packet for our board meetings, as well as on the school website. And it's also on our proposed budget too as well.
The results are in. 6 yes, 36 no on the amendment that was proposed. Additional questions?
Yes. I just feel like an additional line or a line instead of the 2021 budget would be more helpful when we're looking at this during the town meeting. That's a request I'm going to make for next year.
The additional line showing
Actual expenditures to date.
year-to-date expenditures.
So from last year's budget to May 1st or, April 1st even, showing what's been spent from July 1st to that date, and put that in there, either an additional line, or we don't need the budget for 2021. So instead of that one.
Marcy, would it be better to say how much of the prior year's total budget was expended?
How much was spent from July 1st?
What I'm asking is, would it be better, because we have to go through audit and all this kind of stuff, and when you're going month to month, it may not be representative. So would you like to see, what I hear you saying is, you want to see how much of the budget that we've agreed upon was actually spent?
Yes.
Right? So that might be helpful on a year-to-year basis, instead of cutting it off at like April 1st or May 1st. So I'm wondering if it's better to put in line by line how much of the budget that was agreed upon by the town was actually spent,
Yeah, yeah.
instead of trying to cut it off at a month, because that would be very difficult to do.
Right, well, I mean, every town or every organization does it differently, but if we knew, you know, how much was spent either last year, out of last year's budget, or from July 1st to now, to April 1st, it's helpful because it shows you what's been spent. And you look at things, and especially when you see things, well, another question I have is, like, are we still buying books? You know, a lot of people are going digital. You still buy the same amount of books. And supplies, there's 2 pages of books and supplies, and it's the same numbers year after year after year. So that's one example. There's a lot of other examples.
I would just make the comment that it's a little bit misleading because a lot of bills come in very late in the year that don't pay. So you may look at this saying, why are you asking for this much when you only spent this much so far? A lot of those bills get paid very late in the year, so it can be very skewed as far as, well, why are you asking for this and what's with this so far? It's only 3 months left. A lot of bills come in at the last minute.
I understand that, and that can be talked about.
Maybe have a comparison to the year before that.
The other possibility is back up a year.
Back a year, so you see the same data.
Then you're more out of date. It's like 6 months they have to.
Yeah. It's just, you know, it would just be nice to see that.
Yep.
You know, thank you.
20 years ago, we had that in these presentations. We had 2 years ago what we spent in each line, last year what we spent so far, and the budget. Yeah. I don't know when that got lost.
We're going to need very fast.
I already did.
I know. Donald Denley, Eastside Drive. I have never seen a capital project expense line increase by $600,000. It's a lot of money. Came to light in last week's special meeting. We've spent over $1 million, primarily in the Public Works Department, on new equipment. I know I've seen a lot of new trucks and vehicles drive around, and certainly some of them need to be replaced. But a 16% hit is a lot, considering we've had significant tax increases over the last several years. And I'd like a little explanation as to why we feel the need to do this particular year.
I'm going to let Eric handle this, but Don, I want to address you directly. We have done a poor job as a community sitting there and updating our capital equipment. And I don't know if you looked at the list, but the list also includes culverts and roads. There's $400,000 we've always spent every year in this town, even before I got involved on roads, right? But
You're saying $400,000 we spend every year?
yeah, on roads.
Well, what we've done since then is we've now added 2 full-time, fellows, two full-time employees to that department. We have no more roads. Okay, we've had 2 mild winters, and it just seems like we're spending a lot of extra money all of a sudden when we may or may not need it.
Well, you can sit there and look at that. We can sit there and close our eyes, as we have done in the past, on these types of projects. But we've done what I believe, from a town's perspective, we've done a much better job maintaining our roads, maintaining what we have, and we continue to look to invest in this town. We don't look to overspend in this town. God bless, we don't, Don. You know that. Other than you not wanting to pay any taxes, which I respect, but we have done a very good job in the last 8 years to sit there and make an improvement and make an effort to allow our Public Works Department to do more work and to make our roads better.
Well, then we can address some specific projects in the spending of $600,000. And we've already spent, like I said, over $1 million on equipment, and we have 2 new full-time Public Works guys who I'm sure do a fine job. But we seem to survive for many years, albeit, not proper maintenance perhaps overall.
with 3 or 4 with the same roads in 2 mild winters. That's all I'm saying.
Sure, those are really good questions, and, you know, I understand where you're coming from. So, prior to me being town administrator in 2018, I ended up on CIP. And I kind of got assigned the task of looking at public works. So I went down there, and the first thing I did was inventory everything they had and put it in a big fat spreadsheet. And I said to Eddie, the supervisor at the time, what works and what doesn't work. And he said, well, that one kind of works. You know, and we went through every piece of equipment they had. And at the time, in 2018, the average age of their heavy equipment was like 39 years old. They had a bulldozer that was 54 years old that they were still trying to use. I mean, the place was a wreck. On average, the town had put capital expenses of about $25,000 a year into public works. And they had just run the place into the ground, frankly. The building, the roof leaked, the electrical system in the building had major problems, and they didn't have the gear to do a reasonable job of the roads. At the same time, we went out and evaluated all of the bridges and culverts in the town. The larger bridges over the Hop River, those get evaluated by the state. And then we went through and evaluated all the culverts. And it was kind of depressing. In fact, my second day on the job, I got a call from a resident that said, hey, the culvert by my house just collapsed. And I said, huh, okay. So I drove out and looked at it, and sure enough, the end wall of the culvert fell off because it was about 50 years old and it hadn't really been maintained. So I called the Public Works foreman, Eddie, and I said, Eddie, come look at that. And he drives up in the pickup truck and he looks at it and he goes, huh, that's not even one of the ones we were worried about. And that kind of scared me. So we went and evaluated everything professionally, and then we made a list of everything, you know, that we had that was failing, and said, okay, we're gonna have to replace these, and how do we do it? And the first thing is, these are expensive projects. The next major culvert project will be the one on Lake Road by Basola. That's about a $1.8 million project. Now, we've got about half the money in a state grant to do that, but we're gonna have to pony up the rest. We've had a bridge and culvert fund. That was one of the first things I did when I took over, was convince the Board of Selectmen and Finance to start capital funds, and we've been putting money into it ever since. After this budget and the next budget, we'll have enough money to do one culvert with our current rate of funding. There are 3 more that are on the poor/failing rating, which is a 2 or lower out of a scale of 1 to 9 for culverts. So we are gonna have to deal with that. Our neighboring town is talking about a $10 million bond to go after all their failing culverts. It's a problem. We just frankly haven't put any money into it in a long time, and we've let them really deteriorate. The saving grace is that we were able to fully fund, between federal dollars and state dollars, both of our 2 major bridge repairs. And that's almost $9 million that you're not paying for, that the federal government and the state government is paying for, and you're paying for roughly half the cost of the next major culvert repair. So we're trying to do it as efficiently as we can. And the same thing with the roads. We hired a company to come in and evaluate all the roads in the town of Andover and give us a ranking of the roads and where they are in their average life expectancy. Because the cost of asphalt went up, you know, very significantly, and the plan that worked 30 years ago for road work doesn't work now because the cost of liquid asphalt is too high, and you gotta be a lot smarter about your road network. That's why, unfortunately, we're stuck with chip sealing a lot of their roads because we have to preserve them, and it's the only thing we can afford. To put it in perspective, about 40% of our roads are really in failing condition. We have 34 miles of road work, so if you just ballpark that and said there's about 15 miles that's really failing, right now, it's at least $500,000 a mile to repair those roads. So what I'm saying is to repair Andover's roads to good condition right now is about $10 million. We're not trying to take a chunk out of that all at once. We're doing it, the goal has been to get Andover back in a reasonable shape over about a 15-year period and get the infrastructure back, not to do it all at once. But it is bloody expensive, and I get you there. So that's why. I mean, happy to answer any specific questions about specific projects.
Well, yeah, that would be my next question. You have $600,000, what are you going to spend that? You have a specific priority list of what you would like to accomplish with the $600,000? I'd be very interested in knowing that.
So,
is there more equipment in this $600,000, or it's just projects?
No, that's projects. That's primarily the major costs for us are the cost of doing drainage work, both the piping, the concrete basins, and then the asphalt resurfacing afterward. That's the majority of what it. If you look at the budget, it's basically guardrail repair. That's a pretty expensive thing. The cost of chip seal, and the cost of shimming the roads, and the cost of addressing drainage. That's that $410,000 we put into road work annually. The vast majority of them comes in those basically four things right there. That's the majority of the spending.
So the bridge that's going to be repaired in this fiscal year is the one on Lake Road?
We can't afford to do it in this fiscal year. We're going to do it next fiscal year because we need money in this budget and next year's budget to be able to afford
just
that.
for my own information, going back, how much money was in this line item last year?
Last year it was funded at $100,000.
Okay, so that's a little light.
Right.
Yeah, that's a
So
little
the reason why we increased it to 175 this year is because if we put 175 into it this year and next year, that gets our total balance up to $900K, which is half the cost of replacing that. So we're basically funding that particular project over about 4 years, a little more than 4 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Additional questions?
Yes, Scott Sawyer again. Just a general concern is that, we've got, I'm sorry, Scott Sawyer. General concern is that we are using the surplus from RAM, what do I call it that, the money they're giving back and the decreasing share to cover up things here. Not a cover up, but to offset all this other stuff, and that money is going to go away soon. And what's going to happen to our budgets if, in a couple of years, our RAM share has gone up, we're no longer getting an 8% decrease, but a 5% increase, or whatever. How is that going to affect ongoing budgets? When we increase it once, it rarely goes down. So how does that affect it?
Go down the trail.
One thing I wanted to mention tonight, when we met with the RAM superintendent, we talked about enrollment projections. They had enrollment projections out 5-10 years, something like that, and they had Andover's projected enrollment. What they did not have, and what I'd love to have seen, was a guesstimate for how our share of the total will fluctuate. But what our enrollment projections for RAM show is that it's basically flat. Actually, it's a little dip in the next couple of years, evens back out to this year in about 5 years, and then slowly starts to rise. So, depending on what happens with Marlboro and Peatland, we may be at a pretty good spot with the RAM levy for a while, for a few more years. And with these bridge and culvert projects and everything like that we're staring down, we definitely decided to take a shot at funding that now. I understand your concern, if you, and one of the reasons why I personally like to take these opportunities to put money in the capital budget is it's not an operating expense. It doesn't necessarily propagate out forward the way that, hiring a new employee can. It's about half-y-halfy in this budget. When you look at the total town increase, about half is in the capital, about half is in the operating. And some of that operating, stuff like health insurance that we can't really do much with. But we did look hard at that, and honestly, we did feel like this is the time to make some headway on some of these expensive projects that we have to save up for, that Eric was just explaining. The culvert work has gone up in price pretty dramatically, unfortunately, recently. So that's actually exactly what we were looking at.
I wanted to mention too, Scott, that I appreciate you bringing that up, Billy and Heber and Don. I appreciate seeing you every year since I've been here, and even if, I'd love to see everybody come out and give their opinion, because that's so valued and important. We don't have a lot of people here in the audience tonight, because for whatever reason, it's not, as controversial. But I appreciate your point, Scott, and that was my point on the Board of Finance. Although we've all come to bringing this forward tonight, I wanted transparency in those numbers, that the reason that everything worked out well and what was spoken about, because I wanted the taxpayers to know and the townspeople to know that, not that it's covered up and not that it's artificial, but there's a reason it's staying level. That RAM went down, so the other spending went up. And I'm glad you brought it up, because I just want everyone to know that. I mean, this is what I was one of the only voices speaking to that in the meeting, because I think it's important to discuss every issue. And I don't mind spending, I just want to know where spending is going and make sure that every spending is needed at the time. And so you hear it from your leaders, and that's what they wanted. But I'm glad that all of you brought that up. Glad to see you here every year and bringing, point after point, because we should have to answer those important questions.
And thank you for saying that, because it was brought up at a special meeting last week. We were spending $200,000 for a mower that we may or may not have needed. There were 75 people there, so it was a decent quorum. But this is a potential runaway train. I mean, it was brought up that we could be looking at a $3 million increase 2 or 3 years down the road. And that's a heavy hit. So the fact that we have the savings from grant this year is nice. And I can appreciate spending capital money, or we have a little money to play with. But we have to look the next couple of years as well, because this is going to get dicey. So thank you for understanding. Thank you for your viewpoints. Thank you all for your hard work. And I understand that roads need to be maintained. And certainly under some of the older selected administrations, things are probably set aside a bit. But yeah, we have to stay, but we have to stay within our means at the same time. Thank you.
Well, Don, that issue on RAM is something we were talking about.
That was you and me.
No, it's fine. We were talking about it. It's here.
Yeah.
There's going to be 200, an increase of 200, but we don't know the percentage that's Marlboro and the percentage that's Hebron. And we're not raising it because we're seeing savings from RAM. I'm answering Scott's questions, but we're not raising it but that's what has to be documented. And I was telling Eric, we need to understand the consistency of that number, because the numbers that the Board of Education is referencing, and I will sit there and say, I don't understand it exactly, but I believe it includes pre-K and lower grade levels. And my issue was, does Hebron and Marlboro's numbers represent pre-K as well? So we have to get more information on that, and it will definitely be in next year's information. But if you look at this, it says they're going to increase by 200 students over the next 10 years. So
Marlboro and...
No, Rand, total.
Okay.
Bob Hamburger. I'd like to move that we call the vote shall the budget prepared by the Andover Board of Finance for the fiscal year July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025 be approved to go to referendum?
You're calling the question, in other words. Is there a second to the motion?
Second, Scott Sawyer, kind of.
Okay, this is the debate and vote on the first official ballot we got. All those in favor of ending debate signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. You were given official ballot number 1. Please mark yes or no. Registrars will collect the ballots.
You reach a certain point.
If the budget passes, this vote, we go to referendum on the 14th of May.
Wally, I think the grand vote is on May 8th. May 7th, excuse me, it's on Tuesday, yeah.
Next week.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday is the RAM budget referendum.
So the 7th.
7th, yep.
Are all the ballots in? Okay, if we go to recess for a minute while I count, this is the last item.
Oh, I just, but I can't put anything else in. Just ask first. Okay, that's all we're doing. Okay, let's see. We'll go with Betty. We'll see. Where this, and I come back with that. Oh, you didn't have exclamation point. Okay.
He can write. He's working for a radio station right now. I told Tyler that.
No. I called everybody.
The results, 37 yes, 6 no. The budget is now moved to referendum. Item number 4 is in order if someone wants to make the motion. Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.